So next we have Jeff Shawcross from Quatrix talking to us about security. And as Jeff will share with you in our research findings for 2025, and in fact for the last 8 years, security is number one when it comes to when people are looking to buy and also once they've moved in. And we're delighted to have Jeff from Quatrix join us and take us through some of the information that obviously he's going to share with our owners to empower them to make the right choices. Welcome, Jeff, today. Thank you for joining us.
Great. Thanks very much, Samantha. It's an honour to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity to share a few words on Strata Security. Thanks very much for the introduction, Sam. And we're going to cover Strata Security and the drivers that make people choose one apartment over another, and some really important results that came out of the AAA national surveys. Once we've gone through that, we'll talk through what is a modern security system in Strata and the costs associated with installing one. We'll touch on new technologies, and then finally we'll just look at a few existing systems and some scenarios which may be a bit of an eye-opener for people, and some key points that people should be considering when they've got a system, and what worst case scenarios they should potentially consider and at least be aware of.
Awesome. Thank you. So talk us through this.
This was obviously one of your slides, Samantha, and when you asked people what they liked about their apartment, and security came out as being a 47 or 49% importance of why people liked an apartment. It's obviously really key to what makes people feel happy at home.
I agree with you, Jeff. And I think, especially with the amount of females, who are single females who are now buying into apartments, security is number one for them. So that's right. So the security was certainly very important when they were looking at buying an apartment. But then, of course, this question that we also asked our lot owners definitely demonstrates how important security is, correct?
Correct. So when people are choosing to buy or move into an apartment, rent, they number one priority came out as being security. So it's a real good benchmark. And also when people are in the apartment as well, what they consider a key factor to making them feel happy in the apartment is feeling safe and secure. So
yeah, no one wants to come outside or encounter somebody strange within the car park or in their lobby, do they?
no, and there's such beautiful places. Apartment buildings have normally or quite often got great locations, great shared spaces. There's so much to be said as a positive for apartment living, but you want people to enjoy those spaces, to move out into the open areas, the barbecue areas, the pools, and feel safe. And obviously, as a result of doing that, you're going to probably attract more families, more community-minded residents, and breed a better harmonious community by doing so.
I agree with that. I agree with that. So talk to us about what strata security looks like.
Three very basic components. You lock the doors, so you know who comes in the building. If you've locked the doors, you need to let your visitors and guests into the building, which is the second component. And the third one is how to help manage the common spaces. So you've got locks, swipe cards, intercoms, and CCTV. So this is slides. This is what your traditional basic security system look like. As everybody knows, it's a conventional audio intercom, work fine, still works in many places today, but doesn't really fit the needs of potentially the more forward-looking people, younger generations, and there's a lot more technology out there.
I agree. And I know when I stayed in an apartment recently in Sydney, we had one of these systems and I looked at it and I thought, I wonder how safe that's going to be for me. So I think when you see something like this, it does make you slightly more wary, especially when you consider how many more modern systems are out there now and just how transparent they make that whole security process.
That's it, especially as you move towards the city centres and the higher traffic areas. There's people expect a higher level of security, and like you say, it is available. And this is an example of what you can have. Um, Obviously, traditional intercom, instead of using keys, you use um, security fobs to enter the building, or potentially use your mobile phone to enter the building instead of a fob or a key. Um, Once you're in your apartment, if a visitor rings, obviously you can see and verify who's at the front door. So, the people coming in, everybody knows who they are. If you're not at the building, you can answer the deliveries on your mobile phone. So there's sort of three different components to this. Obviously, being able to let people in remotely is really, really advantageous in the world of home deliveries.
Mm,
And being able to enter the building and restrict who comes in the building using a bit more smart technology is excellent.
mm.
And then the last component is to be able to do this, manage it remotely, either by an active committee or a company like ours or one of the other many good security companies out there. Reduces your service costs, increases the functionality and turnaround times, and we can spot problems before they even occur. So, um,
I think that's important because it's about prevention better than cure, right? Because once you've had a break-in into your apartment building, then you have to declare that to your insurance, your premiums go up. So certainly, if you're able to actually prioritize your security, not only will you have a happier group of residents, but also then it's likely to help with your insurance premiums.
absolutely, yeah. And this is just to give a sort of an estimate of costs to give people an idea of that. It costs money. Obviously, you need to be able to spend this amount of money, but it's cost per unit. It's not hugely expensive to give yourself a fully operational smart system. $2,000 per unit for a 16 unit complex, or the second scenario of a 32 unit building with two doors at $1,500 per unit, or $30 per day. I think it's it, it's certainly reasonably affordable, and if you consider that potentially you could increase the rents if you needed to as an investor, or if you're selling the building, I don't think it would take much to recoup that sort of investment. So
No.
um,
And I think, $30 a week, across 32 units, that's basically a dollar per apartment, right? To actually have that extra security. So I think at that kind of cost, you spend more money on a cup of coffee a week than you would, on your security. And yet security, as we saw, was paramount.
very much so, yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so this is just a little bit on what your access control, your swipe card system. There's a bit of a um, uncertainty about what newer technology, instead of using a key or a security fob, can do. But like the image on the right, it's completely secure. You get sent an email via your security provider. You download an app. You get sent a secure credential which you can't copy or send onto anybody else, and it allows you to be given access for a building or for a door. And that privilege can be set on the system, and can be also revoked on the system for that particular phone. So it's very flexible, very secure, and I think it's a great feature that everybody loves.
I agree. I agree. So what else is happening in the world of security then?
I think we touched on these already, but the intercom let your deliveries in from the mobile phone if you're not at the building. The middle one's really good for owners corporations. The fact that you don't need to spend weeks in the basement of your building in a dark room retrieving footage anymore. Um,
Been there,
yeah,
done
you,
that.
that's,
I could
that's
do better
right.
things with my time, that's for sure, Jeff. So how does the UniView Smart Search work then?
And the UniView Smart Search, it's the same as every brand pretty much out there, any credible brand out there now. Um, it allows you to search via type of events as well as just by time. So, you can search for cars, you can search for people, and the AI stuff that's just coming in now and will be more readily available in the next couple of years. It's you can be more defined in the searches, reducing the search times. You connect to NBN or potentially a 4G connection to your recorder, and you can do this from the comfort of an apartment. We can do it from the office, and you no longer need to be in those basements.
And the mobile credentials, we kind of like touched on that before. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yeah. Use your phone to enter the building.
And I think that's great because if you love to go for a run in the morning and you just basically want to put your phone on your arm and pop your AirPods in, you can off you go. You don't need to take any keys with you or anything extra. And I think that's the kind of like convenience of it, isn't it? Correct.
Absolutely, yeah. You're going out on a Friday night or whatever it is, yeah. To be able to use, it's you can have multiple modes of access, but yeah, to be able to walk out the front door with your mobile phone, you do everything else with it now. It was 5 years ago, 10 years ago. It was like to think you'd be paying for everything on your mobile phone. You know, it is the single point of contact that you have with the world now almost. So to enter the building, it's a bit of a no-brainer.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Now, CCTV cameras, we have come across so many apartment buildings that just don't have enough installed. And it's not until you start living it that you realize where you need to add them. So talk to me about, what's happening in terms of CCTV cameras and the, modernization of that kind of security.
I think within Strata, there's still pretty much um, you still need to wire them, you still need to cable them. We get a lot of inquiries about can we just put wireless cameras in, and the technology is there, but unfortunately, concrete buildings, you can't pass wireless signals through them, or certainly not easily. So we do find that most of them in Strata still need to be cabled, but it's more the technology on the search side and the storage side, which is where the smarts are coming in. Like we said before, you can search for the type of event, and with that AI, it's going to be a lot more defined. Um, Cloud CCTV is another one that we get asked quite a bit about. It is possible, but it's a bit of a cost to do that because you're going to have to store the images in the cloud. Certainly a bit more in the commercial space where you may have an enterprise type system where it really does give you a lot more search functionality where you can easily share footage between people, but in Strasser it's not really cost effective at the moment. So there's certainly it's all within the building, but the smarts are within the recorders.
So something to be looking forward to as we kind of like move forward. And certainly then I understand the technology will become more appropriate and also more cost effective.
Absolutely, yeah.
So passwords. I don't know about you, Jeff, but I use three passwords and I just rotate them. I know that's very naughty. And I have one password for anything that's to do with financial, another one to do with my social stuff. So how do you find passwords within apartment buildings? What's kind of like the sticking point and what do we need to be aware of?
The biggie, and especially on new developments, we find it's a lot where they've been built systems. The security systems have been installed. The builders go away, all the installers go away, and you've got an access control system which is probably doing great things. It might be there for a couple of years. You suddenly want to add a few fobs to it, and no one knows the password to the system. So I think not knowing passwords is pretty crucial because most systems you can't reset the password without completely wiping the whole memory, meaning you've got to reissue new fobs, unfortunately, which big buildings can be, as we'll see in the next few slides, it can be pretty expensive. So, but it's the same for older systems as well. You need pretty much every system, you need to know what the password is. You need to be able to trust the people who are doing the work for you. You saw a security company. You need to build that relationship and know that it's in a good place, because without those passwords, it can cost you a lot of money.
Correct. And certainly it's important that, when your strata manager is getting the handover from the developer, that, those passwords are transferred across. And of course, if you were to do an audit of a strata company's or a OC's, security system, that would be probably the first thing you would look for, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. And if it's not the top level password, the admin password, yeah, if something fails, yeah, as well as not being able to add fobs, but you can't actually fix the system. So 100%, that's the number one thing we always ask for.
Perfect. So talk to us about this.
Okay, this was just a quick scenario of a well-managed building. You request one new security fob for someone who's just moved in. What would the cost of that fob be? Um, the answer is $105 or something like this. If you've got remote access and you know all the passwords. So it's a really cost-effective solution, and that's ideally where we want every building to be.
Because also a lot of strata managers bulk buy the fobs, and then so then you actually find that's an ongoing cost, especially if people are losing fobs or you've got tenants moving out and the fobs aren't handed over. It becomes a difficult thing to manage, whereas if they've actually got this access control, like you say, via the phone, it's much easier to manage, and you're not actually physically actually charging for something as well.
Now, if you've got remote access, that $100 comes into play. If you don't have it, potentially you need to go and carry out a service call to add a new fob to the system, which then becomes really expensive for one fob. So you need to be considering add 10 or 20, which then the service call is split across 20 fobs, so it becomes a lot more cost effective. But as you say, if you've got remote access or if it's a mobile credentials, it's a lot cheaper again.
So you can be modern and also save yourself money, and I think that's the key here, isn't it?
Absolutely, remote access. 2 or 3 service calls over the year, you're going to pay for itself. Plus, you've got all those benefits that go with it.
So here you go. That's the answer you were talking about. So that's the $105 cost for the fob. And then you're talking about the new fob, but you don't know the password. I hate to think what that cost might be, Jeff.
Absolutely, yeah. To add the single fob to the system, it could be, for that size or that number of fobs, 200 fobs, it could cost you up to $8,000 to add one new fob. It's crazy just because you don't know the password to the system. And it may be, unfortunately, that the password's been lost, the people have gone out of business, but you need to know that before you get to adding the fob. So, you know, at least you can save for it, and you got a few months to do it. But to be told someone moves into an apartment, you need to pay $8,000 tomorrow as a owner's corporation, it's not a great place to be.
No, you can spend that $8,000 on so many other things within your building, correct? And that you can't just then pass that $8,000 on to the person who's moving in. It actually has to be shared, like you say, across the owner's corporation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
And then
Okay, this is
we do have systems hit by lightning, like you say, or we get to end of life. Some of those buildings in Sydney are like 40 or 50 years old, correct?
oh, there's some great ones. There's some great systems out there that were designed 20, 30 years ago, but they're still going. They're still working every day, 100 times a day, but they're not supported anymore. There's no spare parts. And if they fail, if it fails over Christmas, being, it's obviously coming up quite soon, you've got to replace the whole system or most of the system, and nowhere's open. You're going to have the doors open for a week or 2 weeks at a time, or some huge cost that you didn't know about. So even if you've got one of these systems, you need to at least know you've got one and what the cost is likely to be, so you can save some money. Because that particular scenario, yeah, it could cost you $38,000, which Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock, you didn't have any upcoming costs, and then system gets hit by lightning, which has happened quite a bit recently in Sydney. You may have a $38,000 bill to pay.
And not many OCs actually have that just sitting idle in their budgets either, and so that often would then represent a kind of like a special levy. So this whole conversation about making sure that you stay ahead of the game, and if you have got a system that's at the end of its life, that you're actually actively working towards replacing that with something that's modern. I think that's important, because if you do have a scenario like this, it's going to cost you a lot more to actually action it in an emergency situation.
Absolutely, yes. So it's you need to know these things, like you say. Even if you don't have the money, you need to know what your risk is and where your systems are in the life cycle.
Mm. And that's where an audit can actually help with that situation, like we've talked about.
Yeah. And that's obviously if you have a maintenance plan, come and check the system, make sure it's working. There's no things happening which at some point are going to fail. You can prevent them from failing by doing some maintenance, which potentially can save you money, or at least know that your front door is going to stop working if you don't get this moisture out of the this particular board. So I think it's really important. And again, it's you'll certainly know whether you've got the passwords and something more about the system if you have some maintenance.
Correct. I think, and we were talking about maintenance, obviously, with Marion, facility management, and they're the same thing. They could provide an example where, a pump actually failed and it cost the owners $40,000, whereas if they actually had preventive maintenance, it would have been more like a $5,000 to $6,000 cost. So, sometimes people think, well, I'm going to save the OC money, we're not going to put up the levies, and we're going to kind of like cut out the maintenance. But ultimately, if you have a catastrophe, it really is a catastrophe, isn't it?
100%. And we're finding people are more inclined to do maintenance now, but historically, security, um, it's been seen to be excessive to have. It's like an insurance policy carrying out maintenance. It's crazy to me. It's crazy not to do it, to spend your $500 or $1,000, wherever it is, a year, to know that you're in the best possible shape. It's false economy to not think it's necessary.
That's perfectly said. Well done, Jeff. So obviously, I think this is important that any OC that's watching this is actually asking their question: when was the last time we had an audit done of our system? Is it tip-top shape? Is it at the end of its life? And the best way they can actually answer that is by having someone like Quatrix come out and actually do that work for them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And just the last couple of points to remember.
Yeah, really, just like we are saying, really, just um, know what's in there. Keep a register, or at least have your security company keep a register of what's installed. Back the system up so you've got a copy of the database. If something fails, at least you don't have to rewrite stuff, issue new fobs. Preventative, common sense maintenance with a backed up system saves you so much time in the future.
And we back up our photos on cloud, and we back up our computers. So if security is that important to your owners, then you must back it up. Otherwise, you could be in a pickle, like we have sometimes been, right? When your computer fails, it's a matter of like, oh, how do I fix this? And it's always urgent.
Absolutely. And there's a building this morning that's in exactly that position that we've just been out to try and service. So it does
Yeah,
happen.
it happens more so than I think you realize.
Yeah.
So we're talking here about intercom services or upgrades. Tell us about this.
Yeah, this was just to try and slightly different topic from before, but it's just to make people aware really that servicing small intercom blocks can be really time consuming. So um, looking at the bigger picture is worthwhile. A new system for 12 units could cost $3,500 to replace with a 3-year warranty. Trying to fix one handset could cost them $900. Not because people are charging excessive, but it just takes a long time to try and fix some of these issues. So
Mm,
think about the bigger picture as well if you're servicing.
I agree. And then the CCTV project brief, it's all about the scope, isn't it? Always about the scope.
Absolutely, yeah. But also, yeah, questions to ask early on when you're trying to decide whether you want it. Um, in a brief, you should be able to put a budget together of, not just what the cameras are going to cost. What are they? You need to put the bylaws in place. It's like there's a lot of conversations and things that need to happen before you can install cameras. So a discussion point, having a CCTV brief, and we've got a brief which we give out quite often, which asks the pertinent questions. Um, so before going out and getting your quotes, getting people to come round, answer these questions yourself amongst the committee, get to a point where you think there's a consensus for cameras, you know what the process is, who needs to be involved in it. And then if you're all agreed this is the right thing for the building, then go out and get your quotes and move forward. But there's a lot to consider before you get to that point, and having the brief gives you a framework to work around.
And we talked about this with Brendan in terms of tendering. It's about making sure that you actually have the scope of works correct, that there is agreement on the committee. And I think that the fact that you actually provide this kind of documentation and support is fantastic because, you don't know as an owner in an apartment building exactly what you're dealing with in terms of security. That's not your specialist area. And that's why it's important to have a specialist come in and guide you because then you will get it right.
And that's it. We'll join a Zoom call on one of many companies. I'm sure will join a Zoom call with the committee at the initial thought. Let's, we want to go down this path, and it's better for us as a company as well to have that conversation rather than just coming and providing a proposal which doesn't really give what the committee needs. They're going to spend a lot of their time getting to a point where it's like, oh, I didn't know that was going to cost $10,000 because of all these other things involved in the process. So we'd rather invest a bit of time up front, providing this document or maybe joining a call, talking through what's involved, and just to try and give a
Provide
bit more
guidance.
education. Yeah.
Yeah, and education, correct. Great. So let's recap. This has been a very interesting session, Jeff. Thank you. It certainly has helped me understand a lot more about security in apartments.
And thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, there's a lot to know out there with the newer systems, but it's not that hard, and there's building blocks which piece it all together. So with the right company, you can go from an old analog system to a newer system that's appropriate for your building. It may not be the bells and whistles, but there's building blocks and stepping stones which you can follow to get what's right for your building, and something that is going to last and work into the future.
I think that's important. A staged process is a really good way to go, especially if you are looking at a slightly hefty cost. If you can actually stage it over 12 months into bite-sized chunks, then you get the ultimate system, and you're also not kind of like having to pay up front that kind of large sum. So I think that's a very wise idea. And that's you done, Jeff.
Absolutely.
That was
Absolute
great.
pleasure. Thank you, Samantha.
Oh, my pleasure. I think that was very informative.